In this chapter, we're going to reintroduce you to object-oriented programming and creating classes. And I'm going to start over again to some extent, although I'll move a little bit faster since you've already seen an introduction to this material in Chapter 5. What I want to do in this chapter is cover these subjects in a little more depth than we did earlier. So for this chapter, we're going to build a time class that keeps track of hours, minutes, seconds. And what I want to do in this lesson is talk more about the difference between public and private data members and how those work. So let's go ahead and get started. Open up a DOS window, and when you get that window open, create a file called time.java. In that file, write public class time, open bracket, and then write int hours, minutes, and seconds, and then close it. In a minute, we're going to put an access modifier on that, but let's talk for a minute about the difference between public and private. A public data member is accessible by any program that has access to the class. And really, that means any program at all if the class has been imported correctly, or you can access it through the folder or subdirectory that you're in. In general, having your data members be public is a bad idea because that means they can be set to any legal value for that data type. I'll show you what I mean in just a minute. Whereas if you make your data members private and you only allow access via some type of accessor method like a set method, then you can control what values are put into that data member. To demonstrate how that works, let's make our data members public. And then to be able to create a class, we've also got to have at least one constructor. So we'll create a default constructor that'll just set each data member to 0. Which would be the default value for the integer data type. And that should be enough to get our program to work. So let's save the file, go back to our DOS window, compile it just to make sure there aren't any issues, and there aren't. Now let's create a work file. So we're going to create a work file called chapter 12 part 1.java. You notice I've already got a file here. Let me erase those values and let's start over again. First thing we want to do is declare the object with a constructor, in this case the default constructor, like so. Then, because our data members are public, we can access them directly via assignment statements. So I can write a set of statements like this, which works just fine. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's compile it. It won't do anything when we run it, but we can still make sure it compiles correctly. So we'll write javac chap 12 part 1.java, and then java chap 12 part 1, although it's not going to do anything. Just return. But these values, these data member values, are public, which means that, yes, I can set them to valid hours, minutes, seconds values, but I can also set them to invalid, like the 120,000th hour, or minutes 72, or seconds negative 100. That's not valid data for a time object. But because those are valid values for an integer data type, when the data members are public, then we can set them to whatever we want to set them to. The alternative to that is to make the data members private. So let's minimize this for now. We'll come back to it. Let's change the access modifier to private. Now, the only place where we can modify these values is within the definition of the class. Nowhere outside the class do we have direct access to the data members once they've been declared private. So to verify that, let's go back, recompile our work file. Well, first we have to recompile the class. So let's compile it. Now compile the work file and then try to run it. Let's make sure we have the right file. Let's save and exit. I have several open at once. There we go. That's probably what the problem is. Don't save. Clear the screen. Let's go back and look at my time definition again. I bet that's where the problem is. Save it. Close it. compile this again, and there we go. I knew there was a problem someplace. I just had too many files open at once. Because I set hours, minutes, and seconds to private, now they have private access, so I can't access them directly in a working program. I have to set them directly inside the class definition. If I want to set those values, then I have to do it via a set method that the user calls directly, rather than direct assignment. And that's really one of the primary concepts of object-oriented programming is encapsulation and data hiding, where we take the data that's stored for our object and hide it and not make it easily accessible, but accessible only through an interface or a set of methods that we define. And that's an important concept in object-oriented programming. So to review, when we want to limit access to the data members of our class, we make the data members private via this access modifier. If for some reason we want to have easy access to the members, then we can make them public, but again, that's frowned upon and generally a bad idea. And it's best to keep your data members private and then write methods, like set methods, to allow access. So that's our review of public versus private. Now we're going to move to the next lesson where we talk about implementing constructors.